It is 4:33 on Thursday, October 24th, 2024. And I call this meeting of the Meridian Historic Preservation Commission to order. Roll call, Blaine Johnston here, Pam Jagosh, Matt Keller,
Here.
Heather Giacomo,
Here.
Patrick Giddings,
Here.
Ken Freeze,
Here.
Deborah Pitts.
Present.
We got a full house. Nice to see everybody. Adopting of the agenda. Before we move for that, I'm going to move into under new business. Brandon Hall up to the first item of new business. So with that, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes.
Oh, excuse me,
Sorry.
adopting of the agenda.
I still missed that. Do what to the agenda?
Adopt the agenda.
Okay, I move that we adopt the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Freeze, second by Commissioner Giddings to adopt the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Approval of our minutes from September 26, 2024.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Freeze, second by Commissioner Geller to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Approval of our monthly financial statements. Ms. Schiffler, we are in a new fiscal year. Am I correct?
Correct. New fiscal year, no funds from the new fiscal year have been spent.
And I think we discussed this last month. How did we do last year? We spent almost all of our money, correct?
Correct.
Okay. With that, I have a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the monthly financial statement.
I second.
Motion by Commissioner Freeze, second by Commissioner Geller for approval of our monthly financial statements. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. New business. Mr. Hall, you're up.
Just pick a mic. Well, nice to see everyone again. Nice to see some of you for the first time. Thanks for having me back. For those of you that don't know me, I have been working with you guys for the last about 4 or 5 years now, doing the Meridian Historical 360 virtual tour. And we've got some great locations. Like I was amazed to pull up today and see the new Voodoo Lounge across the street, what used to be the Little Red Bank. So we've actually been kind of rolling on the front of a wave like a surfer, capturing places before they change. And already almost everything we've done reflects a lot of those changes, especially with recently the Black Cat Farm, which was last year's, Idaho Street, the Meridian Speedway, many different things. If you haven't taken a look at it before, I hope you have. I assume you've all seen it and everything. And so in continuation of it, of course, I mean, I have still a number of different ideas I would be interested in trying to implement. We've talked now about Main Street, some historical area over by the old school, and some stuff like that. So in the same spirit of what we've been doing, I'm offering to continue our project, which will mean another update to it for this year, which keeps all the technology current. There's, as you would probably imagine, changes to computers, phones, browsers, security, everything. So it's good that we have this way to keep this thing fresh. It keeps it working with all devices so everyone can use it and enjoy it. And it grows bigger, and as things change more, it's truly a valuable time look back tool, almost like so that people understand how Meridian has changed. I graduated from high school here. I know Meridian very well, and it's a different place than it was when there were 6,731 people. It used to be the population at one time. So anyway, I wanted to just bring this forward and I guess ask if anyone has any questions or any thoughts or, yeah.
I guess my first thought is, what are your ideas? What do you think we should tackle next as far as?
Well, okay. Well, one of the things I did last year, there is, and I don't know if you want to pull up the tour or anything, but I did the Highway 16 corridor.
Mhm.
And I did one shot, which was by what I thought to myself, romantically, was the same canal in the old historic photo. But I actually went all the way down from the interstate to Franklin Road to Cherry Lane to U-Stick. I just saw today there, U-Stick's going to be widened into a 4-lane expressway almost with 500% more traffic expected. So I've got that whole corridor. And in addition to that, kind of speaking of transportation, not only would it be cool, I thought, to see that as it was then with like hay bales and stacks and farmhouses and that, in 5 years from now, there's going to be gas stations and 5-story apartments and Dairy Queens and everything else. So we could actually go back. One that would be like a future, like a transportation corridor almost, is I could go back to the very place where I've done each of those shots in a couple of years or yearly even, or whatever we want to do it, and see how much the whole area has progressed right before your eyes. But then in speaking of transportation too, one of the other things that's present in the tour that I just did was the interurban building. And so it got me thinking a lot about the electric company that used to run the trolleys. It might be something to expand more into, but like where, I thought perhaps even though we've kind of dug through the historic photos that exist, I mean, I kind of, it's just one of those things I've always wondered, like, is there more stuff about the trolley system in Meridian? Were there stops going to Star or from Meridian out to, so anyway, I thought perhaps, that might be transportation-based stuff. The train that used to come through town even, that was right in front of the main buildings of town right there on Main Street, or not Main Street, but yeah, Main and so yes. I'm sure like the spot out at the, corridor. Did they end up tearing down Black Cat Farm already? I
Not
saw
yet. Not yet.
Oh, because on the news I saw they're building that whole area. And so we have panos out there on that piece of property, even when the little blue house was still there on 10 Mile.
Mhm.
So now it's all gone and it's going to be a massive development bigger than the village. So that's all I'm saying is this whole project has kind of been to keep an edge on the development. It's to see it as it used to be. There'll be changes that we probably don't foresee now where they might, tear out 5 blocks of the old 1970s part of town and build a new city in them almost. I mean, there's a lot of stuff like that happening with infill and things like that. So anyway, I just bring this offering to, with my enthusiasm to tell this story. So.
If I may, one of the things I love to see is when an old historic photo can be found someplace and you go to that same place that photo was taken and you try to duplicate this exact same angle, same height, so you can see what it was maybe 10 years, maybe 50 years, maybe 100 years ago and what it's like today. Then have that and maybe come back, like you've said, all the changes 10 years from now and get another picture. I think that's so telling when you can do that. You can see the change like that.
Have you ever seen the Remnants of Boise tour on my website? It's on Whole Film as well. So if you click the little Whole Film logo at the bottom of the tour, you can go to my website. And I did one with Boise Arts and History during the 150 back in 2012. And I'd always had this idea in my mind about all the buildings in Boise that I saw used to exist that aren't there anymore, and wondering where they were and, just the orientation of them. Most of Boise was torn down when I was a kid in the 70s and 80s. I used to cry when I see a new building gone, even as a kid. But I went back and did panos all around Boise during that time, and they all have photographs in them, hundreds of the old buildings that were there, the Overland building that turned in, all the different, so it's and that's really what we've done it a little bit with this one. If you look at some of the original panos, like on Main Street and stuff, you can see photos from like, I think 1907 or the, different parades that they would do and things like that. So that's definitely something I agree with you on. And in our tour itself, there are some examples of that. But similarly, that's where we're kind of capturing history in a way that it'll be almost like time travel. Because, and this just happened with me again at Mount Vernon, which I'm sure a lot of you know is George Washington's house. In 2014, if I can just tell a quick little story, I went there and I did the main virtual tour I've made of it, the first one. And there was a room called the Nellie Custis Bedchamber, because I guess when they started doing tours there, they figured, well, there must have been a room for George Washington's granddaughter. But actually so I took a panel of it in 2014. In 2016, they had redone the room and done archaeological research, and they realized, no, it wasn't that at all. It was actually a chintz decorated room. So they redid the room. I went back to the same exact spot and shot the 360 again. Then I was there just last summer. They realized there was no baby, so they removed the cot and the crib. And so then I redid it again for the third time in 10 years. And so technically you can sit and click a date dot and see the very same scene you're in change before your eyes. Just like when I did across the street where there's that, what looks like an unfinished building in the works. I took some in the middle of that and what I put down as the text for the clickable point was, by the time you see this space will probably be gone. And it is. And so similarly, I agree with you, I guess, is what I'm saying, that this is a way we could do one at like Maine and right out here, we could do stuff, or say Maine and Idaho every 2 years. And it would be shocking, I bet, to see how much different, especially as the routes of the roads change a little bit, as new housing and larger scale density happens with more people around. There's going to be more everything popping up. And knowing this town like I do from, youth and that, I mean, it's amazing, but there's, I still think there's value in more places that we have to see. And so that, there I am.
Are you familiar with the website called Historic Aerials?
No, I'm not.
I would ask you to check it out because what it has is historic aerials. And you can go back and there's a place where you can click on the side and you can look at virtually any place in the United States and go back and look at it. Sometimes the photos may only go back to the 50s. Sometimes they go back to the 30s. It's very interesting to see. And I think something like that pulled from that website would be interesting to see the growth of Meridian, especially since what's happened since the 60s and the 70s.
Since 1990.
Well, yeah, but I'm
yeah.
just saying, go back to when it
Yeah.
was basically a little farm community, and now it's a, big growing city.
Yeah, I love stuff like that.
Yeah, well, check it out. I think you'd probably find it very interesting.
Ken,
Yeah,
what was
a
that
friend of
again?
mine, Chet Bowers, was a World War II veteran, and he's famous for he was the one that used to fly all over in his plane and took photos of people's houses and was the original like Google Earth of Idaho.
Oh,
And my grandparents, actually, it was funny, they had one on their wall, and I came to find out it was the same guy I later met that had done it. But yeah, I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's great content to add.
What was the name of that website you said it?
Historic aerials. You can look at it for free, but they have watermarks on it. But then you can buy the images if you're so inclined to do so.
I'd have to go back and look. What do we have on East Idaho? So from Maine and Idaho, east 2 blocks. Because those are some of the areas that we're interested right now is what can we do? So we have East Idaho, North Maine. And I'm kind of spitballing stuff out here right now. So probably the rest of the commission can weigh in on what we want to tackle next as far as.
Well, and I know the verbiage is probably important in the final document, but technically for what I've put out there that we could do, if you picked one location of that and wanted one somewhere else,
Mhm.
we can break it up however you want. There's, nothing holding, I'm doing, the proposals for 2 360s and like 24 new stills. So I'm happy to go anywhere. And so I noticed today, I just went and walked around a little bit. I have seen so much change just since I did these 360s a year and a half ago, or 2 years ago, or whatever it is. Lots of new places have opened up, restaurants, new buildings.
Right now, I'm kind of leaning toward doing North Maine for a while, see what we have out there. But again, need input from the rest of the commission on what their thoughts were. So I'm open for you guys to suggest ideas on what we want to tackle next.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Ms. Schiffler, can you pull up that website again that shows, our website again that shows what we have, just so I can look and see?
Which was why I was thinking a little bit of a West Meridian type Highway 16 corridor, like on the Meridian side of it, or even the corridor itself is going to become the split between, I'm sure that, you know, it's maybe technically, it would seem like that would be a Napa on one side, Meridian on the other.
Mhm.
But it's kind of the flank right now of this development.
And I have not driven McDermott Road. And I know they're working on it all the way across there to see what kind of changes, other than a lot of overpasses.
Yeah, so they're right there where those hay bales are is pretty much, or straw bales is pretty much, I think, where the interstate lanes are now
Mhm.
laid across. And so I didn't, you know, I did some on, I did one on U-Stick, I think, which is right next to a little farmhouse with corn 8 feet tall and like an old time Meridian looking shot. But I know that when they widen it, all that's gonna get torn out. And I think the freeway went right through where that house was where I took it. Because there were signs at that time that said, coming soon, you know, your new freeway to the Highway 16. So this is, yeah, right out there by where the canal crosses it. And all of this area, I mean, this is ground zero of future development once that freeway opens up. This is every single piece of land I think is already probably spoken for just about. Or held.
Mhm.
So it's, and that's why hopping down it, I was thinking, like, that's why I called it Highway 16 corridor, is it's something that, you know, it's something I could go and shoot and be collecting, even if we can't say afford to do them all at the same time, but we could be, I'll make sure I'm putting them in a can so we've got them for the future. And I think it really will tell the biggest story about Meridian, because Meridian's going to grow about 4 miles to the west, like in a matter of 5 or 10 years. It's going to be, it already is. I mean, it's already out there with houses and stuff, but this is going to be a commercial corridor almost, I would guess, you know, with a freeway and off ramps. And so anyway, that was definitely one, but that also got me thinking a little bit about, like I said, the original train stop in Meridian that, you know, would have been in the main part of town, and also the trolley coming through and things like that, like to tell a story about it. I know there were those great books made that you can see it, like Albertsons, that are like, they always have like historic Boise, or, you know, you can buy books. I bought the one about the electric train system for the Treasure Valley, and it's
Mhm.
a great little book, but there's pictures and stuff that made me think, like, gosh, you're going to be cruising through Meridian at a stop that used to be there, you know, how the U-Stick, the town used to get their vegetables to market and things like that using it. And
Well, and I had heard at one time that there's an ice house on Ustick just west of Eagle, west of Coles, that has an ice house
still has it.
for the old trolley. And I
Uh,
haven't been able to prove anything or look at it, but yeah, that's a story that I've heard. So that would be an interesting one to look at.
Yeah, that tour I was telling you about, Remnants of Boise, has a whole town of U-Stick.
Yeah.
360, so right by the little Merc, but you can see where they had apples, they used to make ciders and all sorts. It was a whole, and the trolley went through there to take the crops down to downtown Boise and stuff, but it also went the other direction to Caldwell and now and out to, you know, here. So even though it's the outer areas now, they're part of Meridian. You
Yeah.
know, people might not have thought of U-Stick maybe as Meridian 20 years ago, but now it's like about to be joined to the hip, about to be developed into it.
Mr. Chairman, I like the idea of capturing the change along Highway 16 because it has changed since the pictures that you have taken. And then I also like the idea about the train having some images, because I think at some point in our future, people are looking at mass transit again and
Mm.
going back to maybe a light rail or something happening. And so I wonder if we might reuse some of those locations. It would be interesting to get the perspective and the images now.
A similar thing that about, maybe everyone remembers, like 12 years ago or so, they were talking about building a streetcar downtown in Boise.
Mhm.
And I had actually talked to them about it at the time. One of the things we had discussed as a viable option, if it was done, was to do 360s along the route, like once a year.
Mm.
It's like 8 stops along the route as it looped around, because then each year you would see new stores, more people, more traffic, more, you would see how it would have an economic engine to it almost. And not only historically too, a lot of those old buildings, when I did Remnants of Boise, were still abandoned and not yet fixed up. Now they're restaurants, and so it's amazing. It's amazing how this stuff changes. And so things become history the day a road gets widened, or the day a tree blows down. You know, it's history at that point.
So I'm just going to ask the question, for the $2,000, how many 360s and how many just single shots would we get?
There would be two 360s. And then I put 4 large format stills, but I put 24 POI, so I'll take 24 stills.
Okay,
So that's a way in which, say, for example, on North Main Street, if I did a 360 that also included the school, but I had the row of houses along there, we could do individual stills of houses, even some that might not be visible, but the clickable point would be there. If it was something like, oh, you know, there's a house 5 down, but, you know, let's at least get a nice, beautiful new still of it. You know, because who knows what's going to happen to Main Street? I know it's historical, but I would think that's going to become like, you know, across the Boise River where Boise State is, those old houses are going to get pulled out and they're going to build new stuff. Eventually, somebody's going to look at it and go, you know, this could be, you know, so anyway, looking ahead that way and thinking of it. And, you know, I'm just trying to ride the wave with getting stuff in advance.
I wish I had a crystal ball to know what was going to happen first, second, third. So again, I need the commission to weigh in. Do we want to concentrate on East Idaho, North Main, or should we go ahead and concentrate on at least some of the Highway 16? Because I count Franklin, Cherry, Ustick, McMillan, Highway 16.
Mr. Chairman, I'll throw another one in there. Meridian recently approved the expansion of this college that's just off of 84. So there's going to be a lot of changes there in that area also in the coming years.
Which college?
This is, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it, but it's just off of 84. They've got a small campus there now, and they approved expanding that campus.
Is that ISU? Is it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
The ISU, okay.
yeah,
Isn't it the osteopathic college that they,
yeah.
It's not that one. I think it's.
at Locust Grove and the interstate?
Yeah. So there's gonna be a lot of changes there too.
That's where the West Ada School District offices are
Yeah.
there on that complex.
That's where I lived actually when I graduated high school, is over in that area. And the only 2 buildings on Overland Road were the Coca-Cola place and Western States Equipment.
Yeah.
In those days, everything else was an open field all the way to pretty much Meridian Road.
So it's gonna.
Wish
be-
I gotten that.
Yeah, oh, well, it's gonna be tough because like the chairman said, it's hard to say because there's so much going on.
Well, and another thing too, I was just thinking of, speaking of it, is I know there's not a lot of them around, but like old schools. There's a
Yeah.
school out there right by where the Mint still was, I did. I'll have to try to think back where it was exactly, but it's now kind of, it looks like almost a private residence. But, you know, stuff like that is still, you know, there are 1-room schoolhouses and stuff. I know there's one, it's not in Meridian, but you've seen them and a lot of them have been fixed up into like people's residence now or whatever. But stuff like that, like things that do remain, you know, are part of sometimes, I think, another little sub-story of, especially if they're outside the main center a little bit, but.
I have a question or two, but they're not really about the locations. It's more just to bring some of us on the commission up to speed
Okay.
about how the business end and the technical end of all of this works. So I'm assuming that you host all of this? And is it all hosted on your servers or is it on city servers or?
Did I didn't deliver it to you, right? I've got your link into mine.
Just a link, yes.
Yes, yeah, I host it. So I've been hosting it for free for the city.
Do you have traffic information, any data points?
I do somewhat, but there was a big change to Google Analytics about a year ago where it went up to GA4, it's called. But I actually have analytics in the tour and in all the tours. So I have, when I sit there during the day, sometimes there'll be 200 people around the world looking at different tours I've done, like NASA or Mount Vernon or Monticello, get the most usually. But I see Meridian pop up there, and I don't always have the ability to find who it is on the world map. I know somebody's looking at the Meridian tour, and I think a lot of people, especially really interested in history, that find a lot of those other tours like Mount Vernon or something, they'll click and end up going to my website, and then they find something like Meridian. And everyone's heard so much about how great, Meridian and Boise are these days. I think it does get traffic. And so there are people outside of this area and it may be off your website. I mean, it's hard to know where they exactly find it, but I wouldn't say it's like an overwhelming amount, but it's there for people that are interested in it.
I was just curious what kind of traffic it got through the year, if people were finding it, if they were. I know when I first went to look for it, I had a little bit of trouble. There's a lot of clicks between,
To get to it.
to get to
Oh.
it. And I thought, well, that's something that.
Well, and as it's grown, I mean, maybe getting it on the front page a little closer, something would be worthwhile. But
I'm not
that's
complaining about it
beyond,
because I really like it. If you want my 2 cents worth, I think that we could do a lot of things. I would like to see the North Main Street part put on there, since we added that onto our tour. And I would like to see some continuity there. That would be just my opinion of that is, I don't mind doing the Highway 16 corridor. It's still a bunch of fields, and what's not dirt is soon going to be dirt. They're going to be building stuff like crazy. So how much of that Highway 16 corridor is not done? Is there still parts of it that you would want to do, like?
I already did
future.
the one pass before it started where they had signs pretty much along the sub streets like Ustick or McMillan that said, Highway 16 coming soon. And so I assumed because it was straight along a route, just, 200 meters or whatever from McDermott Road or whatever, that was what it meant. So I went along there, and then the one that we've used, I just deemed to be kind of the most interesting. It had the canal in it, which there was that historic photo of the canal. It had the farm with active straw bales and stacked and everything, which really is like a step back in time. It's already history, and that to me is very much what, Meridian used to smell like mint. Good luck finding a mint farm these days and stuff. So out there, so I chose that, but I've taken the other ones. They're just being held. So they're there if there was ever, like, there could be someday like perhaps in the future, there would be a real interest to have all that stuff, to see it and do it again in 2030 and see what it looked like before. And somebody would fund to do it all. Then we could let's do all 5 of the ones from 2023, and let's do 5 more in the exact same spot in 2030 or something like that. But so getting them through, though, is always important, because a bunch of film in the camera is one thing, but a finished 360 that's ready to go is another. So, but I think in all cases at Black Cat Farm, I've been shooting far, far more than was ever part of the thing. I've taken other 360s, so I have choices. Because when I look at it, I have to live with it. I have to live with it when I talk to people who are looking at it. So I take more than I usually have anyway. And so it gives options, so.
I think I kind of agree with Commissioner Giddings. I think if we start and this go around, if we do the North Main, that doesn't mean that later on this fiscal year, next spring, we say, okay, they're really doing some work on Highway 60. We can't come back and say, let's do another project and do something over there.
Yeah, I think we have some irons in the fire right now, and I'm not sure we've spent too much time thinking strategically about this fiscal year and where we're going to spend the dollars. We know where some of our dollars are going already. So I don't know if we need to take some time and have a strategic planning session and say, okay, here's how much our budget is, and here's how much here's how much we should allocate for these different projects. We have some irons in the fire right now.
Well, this one has 2 shots that were kind of geared for North Main. in that area. I mean, maybe with
Mhm.
this one right now, the best course would be is let's take care of that area. Let's get the photographs of the houses we want and the buildings, the angles of the street down, looking down. Let's get the 360s. Then we've got that covered, and the corridor is itself another matter that has the photos from the past and maybe something currently or in a year from now or something when it's actually got blacktop on it. And just because this is kind of a passion project more than anything, we have those 24 stills I'm planning to do. I wouldn't use, this is really going out there, but I would be willing to say, if you'd like to do the 360s of North Main Street and have half of those stills taken there, I could take those other 12 and take them elsewhere. Like go down and get stills of looking down anywhere. I mean, we could technically cut those up any way we want. I mean, I would, it really is, we don't have to do all 24 of those that are in that budget right where we do the 360s. We might be able to use it as a way to even see some of the changes and even add new POIs to the other 360s. Like on Main and Idaho, there's new restaurants, there's new buildings. I mean, we could do stills of like where the old bank was across the street, the little red bank. We could have a POI on that that shows a beautiful still of what was built in its place.
Mm-hmm.
That, look what came. So there's a lot of other things. Maybe this is something that might be worth even digesting on a little bit. We have this proposal for this. This gives us a foothold if we go with it. And then you can really think deeply and long about, as you drive around, as you talk to each other, about the best way to utilize this to expand on the story.
So to expand on what you're saying, I could envision us just expanding on the 360s that are out there now to encompass all of the areas where we have our walking tour. So there's areas on State Street, there's houses on the historic register that are not here now. We could just expand and say, okay, let's go down Idaho Street and let's go down, East Second Street and go all the way down to the old high school and then cover State Street and cover Carlton Street, cover the North Main area. And then we would actually, if somebody were to visit the site, they would actually be able to go through all of the old town and all of those old craftsman style houses that we point out when we take people on tours, and it would all be covered.
Mhm.
It wouldn't just be, just down Main Street, certain area, and down Idaho Street, just, one block, or I think it just goes down one block. We could expand on that in the same area and make it bigger. But I think it's something that, I mean, maybe I'm singing to the choir, but something we should think out a little more. We should maybe do a little more planning about how we're going to spend our money and what is our vision for this?
With those individual stills, I mean, the goal with that too is not just to have content for the tour, but it's providing a brand new high resolution, full, done to the max image for history going forward. That comes part of the city collection.
Right.
So those houses that are there today, the craftsman's, they're probably in some form of future danger if they're not, private owner or whatever buys a 2-acre lot and puts 10 apartments on it.
I know that there's been some talk about some of those places in North Main Street. So
Well, if you
Kind of
remember in
in-
downtown Boise, what was called the Central Edition, it's on Fifth Street and that's where I took photographs of every single house in there for the virtual tour. They moved every single one of them out, and that's where now, all those, it's like a whole section of town. If you know it, I think it's on 4th, 5th and 6th and Myrtle.
yes.
It used to be, there was always that mansard roofed house there on the corner, and somebody drove into it and started a fire and they tore it down. And that was the end of that. Now there's giant apartment buildings that are 10 stories tall right there. But similarly, that's the same thing I'm talking about, is those houses were occupied, people were living in them. It was a part of downtown. I went and I photographed them all. There were lawn chairs in the yard and things like that. It was very much a real photo. And all those houses are gone. They were gone a year and a half later, and it was developed into massive apartments. So it can happen.
So let's do this. Commissioner Giddings, if, I'm gonna, if you're up to it, have you look at that Maine to Idaho to Second to Carlton, back to Maine? If we want to concentrate on the area, let's see how many 360s we can get, if that can just be Second Idaho, Second Carlton.
Is that how it works? It would be in one block chunks? How do you,
No, a 360 is when you look at those, each location where the camera is down, that's a 360. So there's maybe now 15 of them or something in there total. So when you have two, that's two spots where there will be a camera down and a 360.
we would go, just as an example, Main Street down to East First is 1 360, and you've got the whole panorama.
Mhm.
And then East First down to, is it, what's Pine is next?
Well,
Like what's on the screen right now.
well, I'm thinking, what,
Right.
is it first or second that dead ends right at the high school? Second?
Yeah, it's second. East second
I'm
Street.
thinking Second and Carlton, because you can do a 360 right there. That way we have the high school, then that'd be a POI, then he can overlay old images
Yes, old photos.
of the high school in that area.
I would not disagree with that at all. That sounds.
Well, because when you're on Second in Idaho, you can look down the street, I think, and see the high school. So
High
you could then have an arrow there that would take you right
Yes.
to the high school, and then you could take a left and go back to Maine where the houses are and the historic area we've been talking about. And then from Maine and East First, you could turn and come back to Idaho and Maine.
Mhm.
So you would in fact be able to hop around that circle,
A whole-
where if there was a house right in the middle on the way to the high school from Second Idaho, we could take a still of it.
Yeah.
And it could be a POI then or something.
If we did that, we'd be missing State Street, but then I guess we could come back and
We
pick
could
it
always
up
come
at
back and do
another
State
time,
Street,
right?
yeah.
Well, and the way the whole thing is done, the way I've priced everything always is just by the unit. So that way it includes everything. So it includes all the programming. So the price per 360, I don't know how much it was listed on there, but you could always just add one more too and do three if you wanted, then it might add $800 more or something. I'm not sure what the rate is on it, but the rates on this are substantially cut, I promise you.
I don't know if we want to, I guess what I advise is that maybe we take a little bit more time, think this through a little bit more. Maybe have some time to think about what is our budget for this year and how much do we want to spend?
Well, yeah, my other thought too is we're getting into winter now. Leaves are gonna be falling. And I'm just thinking of visual content of photograph. It's always nice to have green
Right,
trees, flower
right.
trees.
Good point.
We want to do this in spring. That way we can digest what we want to do. Think about where we want to take photos from and then schedule it for photography in the spring.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that, and that's a very good point.
So with that,
See, if you click on that, the vault building there, see, this will have that example of seeing the historic photos.
Mhm.
I'm sure you've seen those. Just kind of came to. Zoomed in pretty large, so it's kind of hard to see them.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
But having some nice still photos of everything too is part of this. So, I mean, really in the end, the goal is just to, capture and cover as much as possible because things will change and hopefully we'll be there to capture that too.
I remember
Keep
seeing
this
that
story
where
going.
the vault is there and looking at the stills and thinking, oh man, we need to find an old picture when it was Elite Cleaners. Didn't look nearly as nice then as it does now, but it was part of the history.
Well, and I guess, is it State Street then? That's the one over from Idaho where the buildings are gone now? That used to be like the main row of town along the tracks. I mean, to me, all of a sudden I can just hear like bands playing in a parade in a small town in 1905, that it would have been oriented around the track almost, that there, that still goes through there and stuff like that. And that there is a whole story. And a lot of those buildings are gone on State Street now. Idaho still has its. And it looks like it's an open area for like an outdoor like restaurant and bar or something like that.
There it is.
But all these places, it's a, you know, a way to evoke what was there at one time. And yeah, those are those buildings.
There's a picture of leak cleaners.
So
That's Idaho Street, I guess. So, yeah, I mean, it may, if you guys want to take a moment to digest on it a little bit, I know it is a lot of information, but
yeah,
Um,
let's take a pause on this for right now. Then we can come back to have an answer so that January, February, we have, okay, this is where we want to take pictures of. That way you can plan it once spring hits and trees are in bloom, everything's greening up and looks good again, then you can hit it running.
okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah, I was actually planning to shoot it right away. Well, it's got the different colored trees and it's hold it in a can if I had to, but you know, it's up to you. I mean, sometimes in the spring too, I try to get a lot of times like in downtowns and things when the leaves are just about to emerge.
Mhm.
'Cause then you can see the buildings with the trees. Sometimes
True.
when there's too many big full trees with giant leaves, you can't see a lot of buildings sometimes in areas.
So okay, I guess that answer, brings up another question. How long would it take you to do the photographs and get it ready for presentation back to us?
I could be here in 1 month from today. Or whenever you meet again, probably, because I just happened to have finished a bunch of really, really big projects and I'm a lot more, like, this is something I was just, because I drove by it to see and I was like, oh, yeah, great. They're not, you know, I thought it looked not too bad, actually. Right now, lawns are really beautiful. You know, October is really a great time. And it's gonna get cold, so those leaves are gonna start dropping pretty quickly. I was thinking about doing it Sunday morning because I thought we kind of had nailed down where we were gonna do them, but.
I can go either way. So you guys talk about it. If you want to tackle something now or wait till spring.
Are we planning on having a strategic planning session where we look at our budget and try and decide where we're going to allocate our dollars? I don't remember doing it last year, but
We didn't. If we do, it's going to have to be late in December or after our,
in
or
January,
January.
right?
Well, you know, I would be happy, like I said, if we do what we've got on the table now, which is the finite tangible amount. And if you ended up saying, hey, we did get one more, you know, and you added that extra 600 or 800, whatever amount it is, I could then in the spring go and do a whole different one and add it to it as well.
I just would like, just in looking at what's on the screen here now, all the trees are green, you know, and so having some continuity here just seems right to me. I really like the idea. I like these and I want to do more of them, but I think we should maybe wait till spring.
So Mr. Neri, do we need to take a vote to put a pause on this? Can we just say pause or?
So, Mr. President, members of the commission, so if you're not initiating any action, the only other concern I had is with haste, I don't know if, and I haven't talked to purchasing, I don't know if Cassandra has, and whether just a PO would be adequate and whether they want an agreement. Clearly don't have an agreement, so I don't think we can proceed today. But it sounds like from what I was listening with the commission, you'd like to kind of do it in stages and talking about your budget and then a scope and then an engagement. So
Right.
certainly if you want to put that off to a future meeting, I think your next meeting is December 4th. You want to look at the scope and like creating, you talked about having maybe a subcommittee, talk about your budgeting and future projects with your budget for this current fiscal year, and then putting that off to your January, February meeting for an engagement with Mr. Hall. That might be the best way to go.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's just table this for right now. We'll discuss budgets either in a separate meeting or in our December meeting. And then we can get back with Mr. Hall and discuss where we want to go from here. So. All right. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
With that, next item under new business is this Saturday, 2:45 at the Speedway. National Register of Historic Places plaque and Ada County Treasures Award. That's the plaque. It will present to Steve. I will be there. I will be there. Councilman Doug Taylor will be there. I don't know if anybody else from the commission wants to be there when we present. I'm going to give a little talk.
I'd like to be there.
Councilman Taylor's going to give a talk. Yeah, so we just need to be there early. Tell them you're with the Historic Preservation Commission and we'll get things set up.
I'd like to.
Okay.
When you say early, what do you mean? Because I see the 2:45 time in the agenda. When you say early, what do you mean early?
Arrive by 2:30.
Okay.
And I will make sure that I'll send you all the information I have on where to be, where to check in at. So we can get there. Any question on Saturday? Next item, Idaho Historical Racing Society is going to induct Meridian Historic Preservation Commission to their Humanitarian Hall of Fame. That will be on Saturday, November 23rd at 5 p.m. So I need a list of how many commissioners are going to be able to make it. Pam's going to, Deborah's going to, you can't. It'll be 3 of us. Commission members, the dinners are provided. Spouses, if they want to go, it'll cost $25. I still need to get a link and where to pay that in advance. So Deborah, your husband? Okay. So, yeah, if I can find the link, I'll forward that on to you so you can pay it. So I will let them know there'll be 3 commissioners and 1 spouse for that event. Any questions on that one? Any further discussion? Item 5, proposal for Meridian Historic Preservation Plan.
Could, Cassandra, could you pull up the draft of the RFP? When I was reviewing Mr. Chairman, when I was reviewing the proposal that came out, I looked at it and didn't see a lot of the requirements that we put together in the RFP. So I thought there was some disconnect there. So that's what I would like to discuss. So it's in number 7, Cassandra. Okay, required activities. If you read that, you'll see that what's in the required activities is not in the RFP, the proposal, the response to this RFP.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, so Commissioner Pitts did let me know that she was concerned about that before the meeting, so I sent a message to the consultant saying that there was potentially some concerns about not meeting the scope of work. And she let me know that in her cover letter on the second paragraph, she's said, I've attached a short proposal to work collaboratively with you, the HPC, the city's long-range planning team to update the plan as outlined in your scope of services. And then she goes into how she would go about it, but she says that she would meet the scope of services, what she responded.
I read that too, and I'm not sure that's what you and I would be used to
No,
in a,
I'm used to a business setting where everything is spelled out, because when it comes to the end, she could say, well, I mean, if it's too vague, I mean, this is like number 7, it's extremely, I'd say it's very specific. So if, you know, that's where I would like to see, when Pat and I were working on it, you know, this is kind of what we came up with, because we did a survey and what people were interested in,
Right.
the commission, and these are the things that came up. So I would not be, I would like to see it, put in the response.
And Mr. Chair and Commissioners, she said she'd be happy to rework it and address concerns and come back next month if you wanted to do that.
Yeah, I want, to me, this is, I see a total disconnect between what she said and number 7. I don't see that stuff, the things that she discussed, I don't see in our RFP. So, that's, you know, there's just a total disconnect, I think, between what she came back with and our RFP.
I also had a question, and I didn't know if the consultant would be here tonight, but I don't have it in front of me now, her response, but I think it might have been in the second paragraph. She was talking about maybe creating a website to track progress on this. I'm not sure if I read that correctly, so I might be completely off base here, but if that was going to happen, if there's going to be a website that would link into the city's website. Let's see. Hold on. There it is,
Mhm.
task 2. And I was just curious if that preparation of a site to connect to the city's main web page that describes the HPP process and informs the public for the life of the project, is that something that the city would be tasked with doing, or something that would be a part of the agreement that the consultant and their firm, that JUB would be doing? I would just want to make sure that we were clear on that responsibility, because I think that might be some work, and I'm not sure the city would be wanting to do that.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Giddings, I think it probably would not go on the city's main webpage, but could link to a page on the history site. And it would probably just be an icon and link to whatever she had. So it would just be
Whatever
like a
she
link.
has.
Mhm.
We should probably just make sure that we know that for sure.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be willing to go through her response and our draft proposal and see what the disconnects are and what are the common threads. Pat and I I'm volunteering you, Pat, but that's where we started with this, was when we did the draft. And I'd be willing to go back through it again to make sure that our draft for the RFP and her response are in sync as part of that subcommittee.
Agreed.
Okay. Do you guys want to get together before we have Sherry's response to the first question? Should they go ahead and just review it?
Yeah, I think we should, Pat and I should get together before then, and maybe, so our next meeting is December 4th.
Yes.
So if we got together before that, but we would draft something and, it would be in written form. What, do you think so, Pat?
Yes, and I think the structure of that would need to be a meeting of the subcommittee, and that would need to be a public meeting, correct?
I think, and Mr. Neri, correct me, I think that the commission could give power to Commissioner Pitts and Giddings to work directly with the consultant to try to revise and come up with a scope that they're comfortable with.
That would be great,
Yeah, I have, because at one point it was the three of us,
right?
then it became Pat and me. So can we just, the two of us meet? Okay. Okay, so we will meet and then draft a document to present to the consultant
Right.
so that then she can address that. So we need to do that sooner than later, obviously. So, okay.
Okay,
So what we will do is we will present the two documents and compare and contrast, give the information then to Cassandra, who will then send that to the consultant.
I think you could cut the middleman me out and I could send an email just with both documents and you all and Sherry and connect you.
mhm.
Okay, that's
We,
fine.
we could even work the three of us together with Sherry and include her in this meeting that you and I are going to do. We could.
We could.
Do you want to meet first, the two of you, and then have a second meeting with her?
That would be my preference,
Okay,
because I want to make sure we have our ducks marching in tune, so.
So if you guys can get your meeting together and then meet with the consultant and have a response by December 4th?
I believe that's doable. Pat, do you think it's doable?
yeah, as long as we, get right on it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's December and it's still October, so.
Right.
Yeah. We
And when we started this, we thought we'd be just about done with the project
thought
by
the
now,
project would
right?
be done by now, yeah. So, yes, I believe we can.
So then we won't table it, but we'll bring this up in our December meeting for you guys' response and see if consultant answers your questions.
Yeah, and I guess the last comment I would have on that is that I think we'll be easily able to come up with this. I think that this historic preservation world is a very small world, and I think that the consultant that we're going to use is somebody who's thought very highly of in that world, and I don't see it being a problem that we just, get some different wording in that proposal letter that we got. I don't see it as being a problem.
No. Okay. Any other discussion for the preservation plan? Okay, we will go on to old business number 7. Mr. Neri, any updates on agreement with Eggers Farm and the developer?
Yes, Mr. President, members of the commission. Yeah, I have been in contact with the Library Foundation. They had a little wrinkle. They're concerned that I think we can work out. So I think we're probably pretty close to at least getting that project moved along and getting that farm moved and with basically storing it on the city's property for a period of time. So hopefully between Ms. Turner and I, we can get that worked out in the next month.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Documenting historic features on the property near Black Cat and McMillan Roads. I showed pictures our last meeting. I think those photos are probably suffice for what we have. They're just old farm photos. There's nothing really there that's significant or whatever, other than the fact that it's probably going to go away. So I think we're good on the photos that I took and showed last month.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, I also went out. Are you talking about that, the project?
South side,
Farm? You're right.
yeah, southeast of the corner of McMillan, yeah.
Yeah, I went out and took some additional photos of it also. And thought it was very unique construction of the main building. It looks like they used a lot of native rock
Yeah,
in it. But I did go out and take some additional photos of it.
So
If-
where are these pictures gonna live?
I mean, I was just gonna say,
That's that, well, that's the next question is where are they going to live?
Mhm.
well, right now, that's the discussion that we're gonna have maybe at December meeting is what are we gonna have or where's a good place to have the photos reside? Um,
If we're gonna do that, and we should, that's
Yeah.
a good purpose for us. We should decide what kind of metadata we want to collect, where we want the pictures to reside. You know, I think there's a real opportunity here maybe to work with Meridian Library,
Mhm.
since they have their own library photo collections as well.
Yeah, I think that would be a great place for them to reside if we can come to some agreement.
Mm-hmm.
We can set up a way that we can, you know, deposit the photos there. In fact, any photos that the commission may
Right, and
wish
come
to be taken.
up with a list of items that we'd want for metadata, like what year was it built, who lived in it, what was the address, when was it torn down? There's any number of things that we could have in a questionnaire.
Yeah, just to update, the council rejected the current plans for that development there.
Oh,
So they've got to go back to the drawing board and come up with something else. So that building, those structures will probably live a little bit longer as a result.
Ms. Schiffler, could you reach out to the library district? Find out contact information, who we can talk to about possibly storing this data?
It's Brian Cottle, bcottle@meridianlibrary.org.
That'll be in our minutes, but if you could just pass that information to commissioners, and then you guys can just reach out to the library district, tell them who you are, what our plans are, to get what kind of information that we want to try and store, see if they're willing to do it.
they know who I am.
Oh, that's bad news.
I know.
Okay. 2025 walking tours. I don't think we need to have any motions as far as dates right now, but just keep it in the back of your mind. How many tours do we want to hold next year? When do we want to start? When do we want to end? Just keep that option available for us. We will go on to any other discussion on any of those project updates. With that, we will move on to final reports, the completed landmarking memo. I don't know where to start on this one. I know that this is something that the commission has worked on for a while on how to document, possibly save some of these historic structures. We've had a little bit of discussion with the mayor's office on some of our thoughts regarding this. I know that the mayor does not want to hamper any development in downtown. So I think as a commission, we probably need to, I don't want to say slow down, but we need to probably watch our step on how we want to proceed. As far as trying to get a delay on demolition permits or something like that, probably going to be a rough go immediately, but that doesn't mean we can't use this as a benchmark. We may have to, I'm trying to find the right word. And I'm gonna pick on Ms. Schiffler to see, or Mr. Neri, one of the two, if we can use this as a starting point and present this to the mayor and council. Do we need to scale this back before we present it? Um, I just don't know where to proceed with this from now on this memorandum for our landmarking program.
So, Mr. President, members of the commission, I guess I don't know, in the meetings we've had and with the mayor, I did say, you know, once we got this done, he did want to see a presentation with the council. I think the fair question from both the mayor or the council is, what's the desire then of the commission to do with this project? What's next? And, you know, the purpose and the charge has always been to this commission is documenting history of the city in varieties of ways. You've done it through the 360 projects, you've done it through these types of windshield surveys, you've done it through some of the varieties of different things. So I think that's really the question. So not really necessarily from a regulatory standpoint, but more from a, I guess, historical registration type of standpoint. What's the desire of this commission? And again, is that the continued desire to continue to use those varieties of different tools that are available to this commission between the studies, the opportunities for designating buildings, designating sites, marking things through that. I think that's what they would be looking for, is kind of what's the desire and kind of what's the plan moving forward. And again, if that's kind of a part two of what you're going for next, I think that's fair.
Okay.
To the council as well, is that's kind of the next iteration you would bring back to them. You know, now we are going to come back with a plan saying, we're going to, you know, landmark these through this method. We're going to use the 360 method for some of these things that make more sense to do it that way. I don't know, but I think that's what the mayor was looking for. Yeah, I mean, you're correct. I mean, the mayor and the Canton City Council has always been very clear that they anticipated the role of the Historic Preservation Commission has always been, you know, documenting history, not as a regulatory body. And so I don't think that's changed, but how do you intend to do that? What's the desire on how to do it? You know, what tools are available, what future things might be available, but future ways of doing these things. I think that's what they're looking for, in my opinion. Cassandra certainly may have a different perspective as well.
Yeah, no, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I think that's a similar perspective. I think what I heard from some of the outcome of that was that Mayor's open to the idea, but that would need to have a lot more well thought out plan, exactly what it would look like, what would be the properties, how would they be affected, what would be the process. So sort of a bigger picture and a more clearly thought out plan.
So, Mr. Chairman, I guess my 2 cents worth is that when we started all of this, we had this idea of landmarking. I think SHPO had suggested that it might be something that Meridian should suggest. And so our first step of that was to find a consultant that could do this landmarking memo. That's complete now. We have a landmarking memo that's complete. I think what we're all saying here is basically the same thing. What is the next step? What do we want to do going forward? And when do we want to do it? We have some irons in the fire right now. And we know a lot more about landmarking now than we did before we started this. So we have some pretty good ideas. But I guess my 2 cents worth is that now that we have this completed landmarking memo and we know some things that we didn't know before, that's great, but maybe we should put the next steps on hold while we have so many irons in the fire. I'm not suggesting how long we should wait. I mean, we might even put the landmarking program into our new historic preservation plan, given that we have so much information about it now. But something like that could mean, yeah, we want to do a landmarking program in the future, but let's get this historic preservation plan done first so that we have continuity, so that, you know, everything that we do makes sense.
Mr. Neri, I guess this is, can this be an option for us? Can we say, to city council. This is the ultimate goal for landmark. We don't know how long it's going to take. We have some work that we need to do addressing certain properties, finding out what those properties are. But this could be 10 years down the way before we actually get to this. Is that an option for us?
I think so.
Okay.
I don't really see that as a problematic thing. Like I said, I think, and the question I think the mayor has asked in a couple of meetings I can recall was, again, what does landmarking mean, right? If I'm the property owner, what does that mean to me? Does it mean I can't do anything? Does it mean I have to ask somebody before I do anything? Or does it cost me something? Does it make me do something different than I might do? You know, I think those are the questions really the council is likely to ask. And again, I don't think anything different than any other property owner would ask the same thing.
Okay.
What does that mean to me? Again, if the charge of this commission is to, again, document the history of our community, that's another point of documentation. That's really what those are. And again, what does that mean going forward? It can vary. You know, because I think, and this commission's seen over the time period I've been involved, you know, people have come to the commission based on some of the work this commission's done and said, we really would like to be designated as a historical building or historical landmark or historical place. And, you know, you've made us aware of it and why it's valuable to us. Others just said, thanks for the notice. We appreciate that. You know, we like the recognition of the sidewalk marking or the sign or whatever. That's all we're interested in. That's all we want to do. And that's fine too. So I think it's varied, but I think if you take that approach, Mr. Chairman, I think that's fair
Okay.
to the council.
So I guess what I'll do is, I'll prepare, I don't want to say speech, but that's what it's going to have to be, a presentation to, mayor and council saying, this is our final document. We don't know what the timeframe is going to be. And I will try and answer some of these questions that Mr. Neri brought up. As what's next? We'll need to figure out what properties are going to take place. And from our surveys that we've done, I can at least get a few, but I think as a commission, we're gonna have to go through that survey list that was done and take a look at it. And that may be something we can do next year and then come back to mayor and city council and say, okay, we've discovered 6 more properties on that could potentially be taken up as in our landmarking program. And try and answer some of these questions. And I will probably have I know I will have my draft prepared to give you guys in December. And then we can reach out to the mayor's office and say, when can we present this? And maybe our presentation to city council for what we did this last year would be the best time to do that. I don't know. So, because I always present, or the chairman always presents a summary of what we did the previous year for mayor and council. So
When do you do that?
usually in March.
March?
It varies when they want to see us. They say, will you be available on such and such a day? Yes, I'll be available. So, and that may be the most opportune time to talk about this before mayor and council.
Yeah, I could see where it might be advantageous to do that. And it might be advantageous to make it a part of our historic preservation plan.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I think everybody sitting up here recognizes there's a couple of areas that could be historic districts in Meridian. I don't know if we were to stand out there in front of the city council and tell them we need historic districts that we would get very far right now. But it is something that we could plan for the future and something that, you know, I think all of us would agree would be advantageous. This could be something like that too, having a landmarking program.
Yeah, I totally agree with you that I think probably not this very moment in time, but somewhere down the future, if we do our homework, identify properties, if there's enough in an area, I think should be able to determine that from our past surveys. Yeah, and I think reach out to the owners and say, okay, we've got these properties, there's 6 of you in this group. I think the owners have got to buy in on it, but we'll have a little bit of work to do to get to that point. I've said my 10,000 words for the day. I'm done. Any further discussion on our landmarking memo? Hearing none, we will not have a November meeting. We will not have our regularly scheduled December meeting. We will have a special meeting on December 4th for those 2 months. I am headed to New Orleans on Sunday for national conference. I will have a report back at our December meeting on what I learned at that point. If you guys can think of anything else for topics, let Ms. Schiffler and myself know what you'd like to talk about. We'll continue discussion on these other things that we've tabled for right now. Again, thanks everybody for showing up this month. It's great to see everybody in person. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn this meeting.
I second.
Motion by Commissioner Freeze, second by Commissioner Geller for adjournment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're done. Thanks, everybody.